Hello, everyone. Okay, a nice intimate group today. Where is everybody else?
No one wants to know the answer at the
Oh, yeah, true. And we do say, sorry, maybe spoilers.
Louise, can I say one quick thing?
Of course.
I hope that I know I'm speaking for all of our team of Book Sandwich Inn. We may select the books. Louise is responsible for getting all these terrific people to review. Plus, we need to thank her for that. Plus the fantastic cookies that she
My pleasure. I've actually been astounded at it's been relatively easy to match presenters, so it's important to me that for many books that there be some sort of affinity between the book and the presenter, whether it be expertise or whatever. And people are very gracious, even the ones that initially say, not really my thing. We're flexible enough here that I just say, hey, go for it. Doesn't have to be a book review. Do what you want. Anyway, special thanks to everyone who has been here every session. This is our final for 2026. And I'll piggyback on Marco. Thank you to the committee, which is terrific. This is one of those really good ad hoc committees. We meet twice and get all this done. So if you're interested, let us know. Committee members are Margot Brown, Lisa Derrickson, who does our beverages and the cheese and crackers, Karen Alpha, who's not here today, Dusty Hewit, who happens to be married to our presenter, and Hazel Russell, who's at the back table waiting for you to renew your Friends membership if you have not done that yet. She's back there with Kristen Swain. I'll say one more time in case there's anybody new. $5 for an individual, $10 for a family, a great deal. Let's see, and thank you to the Friends for the support to our library. Our library is a real star in the Southern Tier library system, and much of it has to do with the support we get from the Friends and the community. And our fabulous director in the back there, Pauline Emery. Help yourself to refreshments. If you haven't signed an advocacy postcard because you forgot afterwards, please do it. We'll be delivering those to our legislators later this month. We had really good meetings with them in Albany last week. Hoping to at least get back to flat funding. The governor suggested reducing library funding in her budget. Oh, yay. Let's see. Take your chair to the rack when we're done. And my good friend Todd is here somewhere, and he will be stacking.
Except for 12.
Except for 12, sorry. Thank you, Margaret. She keeps me on my toes. I wanted to share one thing. So, I, for years, was a Washington Post subscriber, and it was largely because they had this fabulous newsletter that came from one of their editors, Ron Charles, who was a terrific critic and just so good. And as you probably know, the higher-ups of the Post decided that they didn't need to talk about books anymore, and in fact that entire section is no more. And Ron Charles, this editor, was one of the 300 people laid off. He's now doing a Substack, so if you're into that kind of thing, I suggest it. I listened the other night to an interview that Scott Simon from NPR did with Ron about that and all kinds of other things. But this is just a little short bit from it. They had a question from somebody calling in. Where do libraries and librarians fit in here, meaning the book world. And what Ron said was publishers know libraries are crucial, absolutely crucial to distribution and what they call discoverability, because there are many, many people who will not invest in a book, cannot invest in a book. And the kind of attention that a good librarian and a well-curated display can create for that community and those authors is absolutely essential. I've heard Penguin Random House people all the way up to the top say, we've got to keep the libraries healthy. We want libraries to survive and thrive. So I think it's essential. So we all know that, but. Okay, today's book is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. It's a popular one, if you haven't read it. There are 35 print copies in the system, 4 copies of the ebook and 3 of the audiobook at Libby, so that gives you a sense of how popular this was. Today's presenter is Randi Hewit, who's president of the Community Foundation of Elmira, Corning, and the Finger Lakes, and she's a real favorite here at Book Sandwiched In, so enjoy. Thanks, Randi.
Does everyone have a handout? No. Does you know? Oh, you do. Okay. Oh, Miss Debbie. All right. Thank you, Louise. I am so excited to be here. I love coming and being part of this. I talk about it as when I have to work on my book report. So that's what, I was telling my daughter, my mom, I have a book report to do. All right, yes, this is my 3rd time presenting at Book Sandwiched In over the years. So I'm a bit repeat, I'm pretty jazzed. And so if anyone was here, the first time I talked was about Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. And then it was Fight Night by Marian Toes. Loved that. I thought, how will it ever be better than those 2 books? And I don't want to argue better than, but holy cow, was this a good book. Unbelievably great book. Now, I want to tell you, I'm going to spoil the heck out of this book. I apologize in advance. Sorry. Now, I'm going to make the argument that knowing the end doesn't really diminish the enjoyment, because it's about how you get there. It's not really about the big reveal. So if that feels, I'm going to give you a moment right now. If this is a thing you don't want spoiled, grab some cookies and just head home. Watch this later, okay? Everyone, okay, you've been so warned. Okay, so just a quick written by me synopsis. This book, it's about Barbara Van Leer. She's 13. Barbara goes missing from the summer camp owned by her family 14 years after her older brother went missing at age 8 from the very same land. This book covers both mysterious disappearances as well as 100 years of family drama, financial inequality in the Adirondacks, and the role gender plays in society. So that's what we're about to dive into. It is a big book with big thoughts and big topics. Now, I had the great pleasure of tuning in to a live conversation with the author, Liz Moore, thanks to a series presented by the State of New York Library System.
Consortium, yeah, so authors, you can view author talks on our website. You can go.
The Library Speakers Consortium.
The Library Speakers Consortium. And you can sign up ahead of time, which is what I did, and you get a code to go into a Zoom. That's great if you want to participate in the chat or, you want to ask a question of the author. But if you just loved a book or an author and you see them listed, you can go back and watch. Watching it live isn't essential to the experience of watching it. So I watched it a few weeks ago. I had already started working on my book report, but I got so much new information directly from Liz. So I want to let you know some things I learned. First of all, Liz Moore is an author who's also a professor of creative writing. So process to her is really important. She likes to work in familiar settings. So, and I wore this shirt, Adirondack Proud. This book is Adirondacks through and through. So if you love the Adirondacks, that is alone a reason to read this book because the setting is so essential to the story. It takes her 4 to 5 years to write a novel, and she always knew she was going to write an Adirondacks novel. She has ties to the Adirondacks on her mom's side, so the land is important to her. She has spent a lot of time in those mountains, but she doesn't write an outline. She doesn't start with the whole story worked out. She does not know the ending when she starts the story. So she didn't know what was going to happen to Barbara. She had a vision of Barbara. She did not know what Barbara's story was going to be. And interestingly, she didn't meet Bear until she had started working on this book. And that's how she talks about meeting the characters as they come to her. She cut over 20% of the original draft in the editing process. So this was this. And these are things I don't know about, but in case anyone here has a lot of deep interest in New York State history, she was inspired by the Trask family in Saratoga Springs that apparently lost 4 children in the middle of the 20th century to various mysterious reasons. And she was also inspired, I guess, by the serial killer Robert Garrow for the Jacob Slutter, they call him Slitter, character. So if those are familiar to you, that's where she got it. Okay. Her process really, and many authors work with this process, but it really boils down to 3 things: place, people, and problem. So when she dived in, when she started this, place was the Adirondacks, the people were the Van Laars, and the problem was that Barbara disappears. Okay. Now, I'm going to do something I usually don't do. I'm going to flip this around and you'll see why in a minute. I want to talk to you briefly about 3 major themes. I would actually argue these are the 3 themes of this book. But that's okay, you can have a different opinion. This is for me, the 3 themes that I kept coming back to as I read this, and I have them here. Normally I go through what happens, or I talk about the characters, and then we elicit the themes. I'm flipping that on purpose because we're gonna, like I said, I'm gonna spoil the heck out of this book. We're gonna dive deep into plot, and I want you to have these in mind as we talk about it. So these 3 themes just run through nearly every page of this book. One, and I sort of tried to boil them down to something, and I wanted you to have a visual: financial inequality. Truly the concept of very wealthy folks living amongst either working class or truly people in poverty in some way that they have to live in close proximity to each other. So the Van Laars have this land that, of course, they don't work the land. They have generations of families that work the land for them. We're going to talk a lot about those folks. So financial inequality. What does it look like for the Adirondack Park to have extreme wealth, very little middle class, and then working class and people living really close to the bone? The second thing is there's this theme of losing your way, getting lost in the woods. She talked about wood panic in the interview. But when you get lost in the woods and you can't retrace your steps, I don't know if anyone's had that experience. It's terrifying. Everything looks the same. There are things you should do. There's a lot about survival in this book. I'm going to go ahead and make the case that wood panic or getting lost in the woods is really also a metaphor for losing your moral compass in this book. So you've lost your compass. You don't know where north is, but you've lost your moral compass. You're doing things that are not aligned with your values anymore. And then the third is this book could be studied in classrooms for generations as a reflection on, I use the word misogyny, but you could also talk about patriarchy in the 20th century and the changing condition of women from, say, 1930 to 1975. We see women in precarious situations and we see generational change in how those situations play out. All right, now, the reason that I've done this, and I've done this first, is we're gonna tell this whole story, that's why you have the handout. And we're gonna come upon these themes, and if you're feeling like some participation, if you wanna participate in what's about to happen, I'm gonna encourage you to do one of three things. Right where you're seated, you don't have to get up. When we come upon financial inequality, we come upon people having to live in close proximity with each other, I want you to clap, that they've just collided, okay? That's just one simple clap. When we come upon someone losing their way in the woods, losing their moral compass, if you're willing, you can indulge me, you don't have to do this. This is A, voluntary, and B, you get to consent. So if this isn't for you, you don't have to do it. But I'm thinking of my days watching Miss Pauline way, way back when she was in the children's library. I want you to just give one of these. And then the last, when we start touching on issues of women's rights, misogyny, patriarchy, just give me a little fist. All right? So it's either a clap, a one of these, or a fist. All three. You're going to use all three, I promise. I have a passage in which you would use all three. Okay, yeah. All right, so now let's tell this story. She plays with timeline throughout this book. You are bouncing between actually 100 years of timing. I want to not do that. So for those of you who were here when I talked about Little Fires Everywhere, that book is densely plotted. And it's a lot of interwoven characters, and it's hard to tell that story linearly. It's actually easier to process what happens by character, and that's what we did together that day. Today, I am doing the opposite. I have broken this thing apart, and I want to tell the story linearly. That's why you have a handout.
I wanted that at the beginning.
Oh, yes, right? So that's how we're going to tackle this. We're not going to bounce around in time. We're going to start in 1870 and run straight through. The back of your handout is a map. This map is at the front of the book. It's one of the first pages. It was drawn by the author herself. This is her cheat sheet she used as she wrote this, so that she could figure out where things were happening in proximity, geographic proximity. That's why I have given you a handwritten timeline. Friends, it would have been so much easier to type. I was so committed to matching up the timeline and the map that I wouldn't give up on this goal, and so you got it. But this was not the only time I had to handwrite it, because I would make a mistake or I would miswrite something and I'd have to start all over again. I have become so dependent on typing. My handwriting was really disappointing me, but I got there, I felt like it was legible. Okay, that's why it's handwritten and not typed. My notes for myself are typed. Here we go. Liz Moore says that opening lines come to her. The universe provides. So the opening line of this book is, "The bed is empty." If you look at the timeline, scroll down with your mind until you get to August 1975 is when that appears. The bed is empty. So we jump into the story 1 month before the story ends as readers. We're going to go all the way back to 1870 to start our story. So in 1870, Peter I, the Van Laars love the name Peter. There are 4 of them. So they're Peter I, Peter II, Peter III, Peter IV. They refer to the generations. So it's father, son, grandson, great-grandson. Peter I, the first Peter von Laar, he buys this preserve, this Adirondack preserve, this beautiful piece of land. And are you ready? Locals clear it. Thank you. A group of locals that know the land, clear the land, and get it ready to build an estate. a Grand Adirondack Lodge. If you're familiar with them, there's a whole movement in the late 1800s where these places were built. He didn't lift a hammer, he didn't lift an axe, he didn't lift a saw, yet he named his estate Self-Reliance. I think we learn a lot about the Van Laars through those two words. That is a moment of the audacity, right? The audacity. It would be like if I named that plate of cookies Baked by Randy. That's not true. I didn't bake them. So from the very moment this story starts, what we have is a very wealthy family, I'll go ahead and say, taking advantage of the knowledge of the locals and being extraordinarily proud of themselves for doing that. This is a banking family. In 1898, so a few years later, Peter II is born. Peter II. Peter II remains alive for the rest of the story. Peter I is long gone when we really dive in, but Peter II is still around. He's the son of the owner, he's the heir to the fortune. They have property in Albany, they're capital region bankers. They spend a lot of time in New York City, they're part of society. So they spend some time, it's coming. Who is it coming? So Peter II doesn't really grow up in the Adirondacks. He summers there. Meanwhile, the Hewit family, 2 T's, not 1. The Hewit family are the family that work the land and really are at self-reliance all the time. And in 1904, 6 years after Peter II was born, there are twins born, 2 boys. One is named Vic. So you would think that they might grow up as friends, but they don't. Peter II never likes the Hewit boys. You have the problem of this close proximity. They're growing up right next to each other, but you've got the extreme wealth, and then the folks literally working. Yeah, that's right, literally working the land. As Peter II becomes a young man, Peter I becomes more and more unhappy with his son. He sees him as weak, he sees him as a little bit much. Now, of course, you've done this, but that's a story for another day. He actually really prefers the Hewit boys. He finds them nicer to be around, just better kids. They're not being raised in society, they're being raised in the Adirondacks in this gorgeous place, but they know the land, they work the land. And so Peter I gets the idea to start a summer camp for all the rich boys and girls of society to come to the Adirondacks and learn survival skills like these kids have learned by growing up there. They name it Camp Emerson. If you look on the map, you can see it. So Self-Reliance is right there. This is the estate. This is the Grand Adirondack Lodge. Is part of this larger property that becomes Camp Emerson. Vic Hewit ends up running the summer camp. Peter II, yep. Peter II has nothing to do with it. What they want to do is make sure kids can go in the woods and not get lost. Now, is Peter I realizing that extreme wealth has spoiled his son? Probably. Does he wish his son loved the land? Yes. Does Peter II actually like the land? Yes, he does. I would argue he likes the land the way Jeff Bezos likes being on a boat. Okay? But he doesn't have it in his soul. It's not in his core. Now we fast forward a little bit, and we get to 1924. Peter III is born. So Peter II now has a son. This family, they get worse and worse. So Peter I actually seems like maybe he wasn't that bad. I don't know if I would want to be best friends with him, but he seems all right. Peter II, nah. Peter III, ugh. Just ugh. And he's raised in Albany. He has his summers at Self-Reliance, but he's even further afield from the land. Peter II will go take a nice walk in the woods. Peter III, not so much. A few years later, notably, pretty big age gap. 1935, Alice, a socialite from New York City, is born. This poor woman never has a chance. All right? We're starting right here. She's essentially placed into an arranged marriage with Peter III. Her family, it makes sense. It's an economic union. And her older sister is friends with this guy from society world. He's actually a classmate at a prep school of the woman, the man the older sister marries. So basically, backing up, Delphine is the older sister. She marries George. They seem to have a pretty decent marriage. Delphine, it's not so bad. Her younger sister, Alice, just is a little bit vacant. Yeah? Is that a nice way to say it? Now, the poor woman, again, didn't have a chance. Nobody taught her anything. Nobody cared. She was raised to be a socialite. That was her whole reason to exist. So she has a hard time making conversation, being charming, being clever. Her older sister is very naturally engaging, very clever. So at age 17, she's introduced to Peter III, and a year later they're married. Again, arranged marriage in New York social circles. And this is the friend of George. So you really have George and Peter III are buddies. Delphine can hang with them. And then there's a much younger sister, Alice. Now she is his wife. She immediately gets pregnant, 1 month in. And they have a son. Let me make sure I'm here. Oh, I missed one. See, I got so into my story. I'm going to go back one thing, because I got to 1953. I just think it's important because I don't want to miss a clap. In 1952, Vic Hewit, who's now running Camp Anderson, he has a daughter, TJ. TJ is super important to what's going to happen. She grows up on the land. TJ's kind of the best, so let's just put her in that category. She's kind of the anti-Alice. If everything Alice is over here, TJ is all of that over here. She lives at the Van Laar Preserve full-time with her dad. So this land is truly, spiritually her land. Yes. Okay, now let's go up to 1952. So now you have, that was 1952. 1 year later, 1953. Alice and Peter get married, and then they have Peter IV. But we never call him that. He's always called Bear. They finally got it right. 4 generations in, they created a nice person. Bear is thoroughly lovable. His mother absolutely adores him. She's 18 and she has this baby, but she's never really had much emotional, she's never been tethered emotionally to another person. And she has this son, and he is her whole heart. He is her whole world. So what does her terrible husband do? Immediately starts putting boundaries between her and her baby. We're talking night nannies. We're talking day nannies. We're talking in any way she wants to show this tiny little human her whole heart. Her terrible husband constantly says that's wrong and that she shouldn't do that. So the one thing we think is that Alice was probably going to be a great mom. But wealth and patriarchy took that from her. And it's really sad because in 1955, with her 2-year-old, she starts drinking. This is, again, an examination of mid-century misogyny. She's told by her husband, "You're so boring. I would really like if you would start drinking to be more interesting at dinner parties." So she does. And her relationship with alcohol quickly becomes clearly problematic. So though she had all the trappings to be a great mom, she pretty much becomes an alcoholic pretty quickly. Those are dark moments. It's sad because Bear is a true, wonderful, just light in this book. He really represents just pure goodness. Now it's notable that in 1958, George, friend of Peter III, married to Delphine, sister, he dies. And so Delphine is now the odd thing, the single widow in New York society. And she's educated, and she's charming, and she's clever. So she dares to remain in society without a husband. Now I'm going to talk to you briefly about these things called Black Fly Goodbye Weeks. Oh boy, oh boy. If the Epstein files were around then, I'm thinking that they would have been hanging out at the Black Fly Goodbye Weeks. These are weeks hosted by the Van Laar men, both father and son, that are week-long celebrations, I guess saying goodbye to black flies in the Adirondacks. Just think lots of booze, lots of sex, lots of running around, and they bring in dancers and artists and people from the city to be interesting, but to kind of drape themselves around the estate and be beautiful, but also, I'm sure, to be sexually assaulted. Like, this is not good. So Black Fly Goodbye Weeks happen once a year at Self-Reliance. And the folks who actually live year-round in the preserve hate them. Because they already deal with this one jerk family, but now they get all their best friend jerks. Yeah, all the best friend jerks come, and they treat everyone terribly. So the people who come are super entitled and just, ugh. Kind of give you, like, think Great Gatsby, but not endearing. That's the Black Fly Goodbye weekend, or weeks. They're not even a weekend, they last like a week. These things never stop. So Delphine dares to continue attending, even though she no longer has a husband. At first that doesn't seem notable, but boy is it notable 3 years later. So in 1961, now you have an 8-year-old bear, boy, not bear, boy named Bear, 8-year-old Bear, who is Peter III's son, Alice's son. Alice is an alcoholic. She is no longer, I'm not going to call her functional. She's not a functional alcoholic. She is in a stupor all day long. You now have TJ, is a young girl, well, like a 9-year-old girl, okay? So she knows this land really well. Her dad, Vic, runs the camp. And so she knows everything, and Bear adores her. He's 8, she's 9. They are best friends. But he really looks up to her, and he loves the land. He loves the land in a way Peter the 1 didn't, Peter 2 didn't, certainly Peter 3 doesn't. He really gets it. He's almost becoming our first hybrid character. Yes, he's a Van Laar, but he has a whole lot of heart of the Adirondack folks in him, and he spends all his time really with the Hewits, not with the Van Laars. Alice, one day, during one of the Black Fly Goodbye Weeks, is looking for her boy. She just loves him so much. Even though she's drunk, she really wants to spend some time with her little bear. So she goes looking for him, and she can't find him. So she's stumbling through the house, and she's opening doors, and she comes into a room and finds her husband and her sister in bed together. And clearly not for the first time. She's witnessing intimacy that is not present in her marriage. She doesn't confront them. She closes the door, she backs away. She decides she must find her son. Now again, I think her son is probably her only emotional tether to another person in her entire life. So when she faces the ultimate betrayal, more by her sister than her husband's the worst. He's cheating on her all the time. I don't think she actually cares about him at all, but she loves her sister. So this betrayal by her sister is a really big event, and actually starts the ball rolling for what happens the rest of the day. She finds Bear, and she wants to take him out for a row on the for a little boat ride on the lake. Everyone can tell she's drunk. This is a terrible idea. So Peter 2, the medium Peter, he says, Bear, no time to go out with Mom on the lake. I'm taking you for a hike in the woods. Okay. As a reader watching this, you get to know how drunk Alice is, so this is probably for the best. One thing leads to another. A big storm starts rolling in. So Peter too essentially says to Bear, hey, get your gear and meet me at the trailhead. We're gonna go for a hike. Alice kind of storms out and goes to the boathouse and decides to get a boat anyway. She starts paddling out and realizes Bear has joined her. He loves her, he loves his mother. And he knows she's in distress. She's reacting to what she has seen. He can feel, he can read her emotional state. So he just wants to be there for her. And he's 8 years old. He's just a baby. And there's this giant storm. So what actually happens is the boat capsizes. She ends up swimming back to shore. He gets caught on the boat and he drowns. She gets to the boathouse screaming, where's my boy? Where's my son? Now remember, she's already drunk. The Peters, 2 and 3, quickly read the room, quickly read the situation, and realize they know the boy is dead. They tell her, oh, he went in the woods. No, you didn't hear him. You didn't see him. That didn't happen. Nope. He went in the woods with his grandfather. Nothing happened. And then they immediately give her a high dose of Valium, which confuses, she can't tell what's real and what's fake. She knows she heard her son. She knows she saw her son. She knows in her gut that her son has died in the moment. But they twist it and turn it and mess with it until she just can't tell what's what. I know I'm sorry, this is very traumatizing. I should have done a little more of a trigger warning. I was so worried about spoiling, I didn't think about how hard it is to hear this story, so I do apologize for that. They immediately start the cover-up. Now, what's interesting is, as a reader, you don't learn all of this till the bitter end. But the Peters know all along. And also importantly, the Hewits know all along. TJ, a 9-year-old girl, she knows this happened. Her father, Vic, who handles everything for the Van Laars on this land, he's instructed to take the body, paddle across the lake, and bury the body, as the father and grandfather announce that he's missing in the woods. Bear is missing in the woods. He's not missing, but boy are they missing, right? The boy is never missing in the woods, but this one moment, this act of betrayal to the truth, sets off their moral compass at this point, never returns. This is the moment where the Van Laars lose their moral compass forever. And it really impacts Vic. Vic participating in the cover-up is really hard on him. He loved Bear. And Bear, there was nothing he could do to save Bear, but for Bear to not be properly memorialized, properly buried, for no one that loved him to properly grieve, the idea is you have to play along with this lie for the rest of your life is awful. But it's made so much worse. Okay. It's made so much worse because there's another family that works the land. We haven't spent much time with them yet. But there's another family, and this family, the man, gotta find my thing, Carl Stoddard. Carl Stoddard gets blamed for Bear's disappearance. The police come, there's a massive manhunt, all this stuff happens. They actually send all the locals away. The Van Laars don't let the locals search the land that know the land because they know Bear's not missing. They call in researchers from Colorado and California that take days to arrive to search the land because of course they don't want anyone to find anything. So in that time frame, the police question Carl Stoddard, who is a caretaker, and they go ahead and create a little bit of a narrative that he had that he did something bad to Bear, but that's of course not what happened. And he dies of a heart attack while in custody. And then the narrative is Bear is probably dead, probably killed by Carl Stoddard, but how did you ever know? So they let this innocent man die with this on his head. Meanwhile, one more thing happens. Jacob Slitter, who becomes a serial killer, not a good guy, he sees the burial. That's just, it's important to know. We're going to come back to him. But then he goes off his merry way and serial kills through the... All right, so that's a biggie. 1961, a lot happens. Why in 1962 they decide to have a daughter is a terrible idea, but they do. And poor Barbara Van Laar is born into this mess. Her mother, Alice, never recovers her sanity. Her break with reality persists for the rest of the woman's life. So Barbara's born to a mother who has no tether to reality, and she has the worst Peter as a father, Peter III. So she comes up and she gets the real rough end of the stick. Our poor girl, Barbara. That happens in 62. In 1970, there's a character that becomes really important when Barbara disappears, Udita. Udita is a state trooper, and she's one of the very first women, or the first woman to ever graduate from state trooper school in New York State. Do you see what's coming? You see what Udita's gonna figure out? The whole dang thing. She's gonna solve all the disappearances.
We want more Udita books.
We want more Udita books. We absolutely do. We want to follow Udita through many more Adirondack mysteries. So also that year, Louise, who's the camp counselor to Barbara when the time comes for her to be at camp, she is at Union College. So things are getting a little better for women in 1970 versus 1955 when Alice starts drinking to be less boring at parties. She's at Union College, and we see women are getting a little more autonomy. Unfortunately, poor Louise at Union College meets a creep named John Paul. They start dating, they get engaged. It's a little bit loosey-goosey why the engagement happens, but let's just roll with it. John Paul, you think is unrelated to all the worst men in this book, but he's not, because he is the godson of Peter III. Poor Louise, she had a chance, but she had to meet someone that knew a Van Laar. He helps her get the job at Camp Emerson. So she becomes a camp counselor at Camp Emerson. And then our story gets really murky. So in 1975, we have Barbara, now age 13. She announces that she wants to go to Camp Emerson. Now I need to tell you why. She's had a terrible life for those 13 years. And she goes to boarding school, and she doesn't like it. If Bear was part Hewit in his soul, Barbara is way more Hewit in her soul than Van Laar, because Bear at least had some relationship with his mom. Barbara has zero relationship with either of her parents. So she's raised as like almost an orphan living amongst her family. The person who is her person is TJ. 10-year-old TJ is the one who picked up Barbara as a baby and actually gave her any sense of family. All right, so we are now to another Black Fly Goodbye Week. Nothing good happens at a Black Fly Goodbye Week. You've got all the terrible people gathered. We got Self-Reliance. And we have Barb at camp, because she has said, I don't want to be at Self-Reliance. I don't want to be a Van Laar. I want to go be a camper at Camp Emerson. And our story begins when we wake up in the bed. So what has been happening is Barbara has been sneaking out every night. Now what we wonder is she sneaking out and having some sort of thingy with John Paul, the worst guy ever, who's like 24 at this point, but we would not put him past him having, being a pedophile. We would not put that past him. He's the worst. We know he started abusing Louise very soon into their relationship. This is an abusive man. We also know that he is having sex with a 17-year-old, so he is already committing statutory rape with the CIT, who thinks she's in love with him, because of course she does, because she's 17. So we give her a pass, like the poor girl. So anyway, we know John Paul is the absolute worst, and we're very worried that Barbara is sneaking out to hook up with John Paul. We're worried about that. So when her bed is empty, and we're like, what has happened? We as the reader think, oh no. Is she mixed up with John Paul? We think, oh no. Has she gone missing in the woods? Oh no. Did she drown in the lake? We don't know.
Slitter's estate.
And thank you, you did, yes! And you know who's on the loose? The serial killer, Slitter. He has escaped from prison, and he's in the woods. So the whole time, we're real worried about Slitter. Because he really likes to kill women. But kind of. Okay. Well, because I'm running a bit out of time, see, this book has so much in it.
Yeah, and are people okay staying a little?
If you're okay, I promise I'm going to wrap up. Okay.
We did it last week, so there's a precedent.
There's a precedent. Okay, I promise. We're really getting close to the end, and then the wrap up. It's a very short passage I plan to read. We bring in Judita, the brilliant Judita, where we're finally having women become state troopers. We finally have women investigating crimes against women. And we meet all the bumbling men. Sorry. Sorry, men. Not all men. Okay. We meet all the other investigators that bungle everything. I mean, Slitter really shouldn't have been that successful, okay? Like, these men are not great at detectiving. But she swoops in and is like, okay, obviously this family is really messed up. Obviously something went down with Bear, and they're totally behind it. She's like, yeah, I see it. So she kind of dispenses of Slitter being, like, it's not Slitter, but we think it's John Paul. Because a bag of bloody clothes is found in his car, and they're Barbara's. That's a really low moment, because we love Barbara, and we're rooting for her to be okay. We know Bear's not okay, but we think, can at least someone be okay in this terrible family? And she's been sneaking out every night. But it all comes together. She has not been sneaking out to see John Paul. She's been sneaking out to see TJ. TJ has been teaching her survival skills. Barbara is not losing her way. Barbara's moral compass is strong. She's looking for a way out of her family, and her way out of her family is through those woods. So she becomes a survivalist. Now, in the meantime, much like poor Carl of years past, Louise is called in for questioning by the police, and essentially it looks like the Van Laars are going to pin Barbara's disappearance on Louise, just like they framed good old Carl years back. But Carl's widow, Mary Stoddard, bails her out because she doesn't want to see the Van Laars hurt another innocent local through trumped up fake charges. I also want the Mary book. Mary Stoddard, we need her book. The kids call her Scary Mary because she's always in the woods. What she's doing is searching for any proof of what happened to Bear all of those years, 14 years, to exonerate her husband's name. Well, everything comes out because Judita puts it all together. And she talks with Louise, and she talks with this girl that is Barbara's bunkmate, Tracy, who has a lot of extra information. And what we learn is that, we confirm it in September. I'll stay in August for a minute. What we learn ultimately through Louise being bailed out of jail is the Hewits come clean about what happened to Bear. And that's what unravels everything else. They come clean. They tell the story of the boat, of the rainstorm, of burying Bear. They find the body. They exhume the body. Slitter, what an odd twist of fate. He actually gets caught again and says, oh yeah, I saw Vic Hewitt bury Bear all those years ago. They're like, not now, Slitter. You're still a serial killer. But he's like, yeah, but I'm useful once in a while. I think Liz Moore has a funny relationship to Slitter. The author, I mean, not in character. So all of this is confirmed, and TJ and Vic come clean. They've refined their way. They're no longer lost in the woods. They have told the truth. Carl is post-communist, like now his family can rest, his daughter can rest, his wife can rest. He did not do anything to Bear. He loved Bear. The whole truth comes out. But we still don't know exactly what happened to Barbara, but we have some hunches. Because it wasn't the jerk, John Paul. They did try to frame him, though. Like, yeah, Barb. They decide, they know he's hurting Louise. They know he hurts every woman. They know that he's, attracted to girls. They know a lot of bad stuff about him. So they're like, well, why not frame him? It's like a different kind of justice. It doesn't pan out, but we like to think his life got a little bit harder. A little bit. Okay. So Udita is thinking, what actually happened to Barbara? And then she realizes the Hewitts have other land 2 hours north. And Barbara isn't really, yes, she's a Van Laar. She's really a Hewitt. And has she made her way to that land? So we fast forward, it's so fun. The Peters are arrested for the conspiracy around Bob Bear's death. That's some nice justice, we like that. But then we realize it looks like John Paul will probably inherit the bank, and we don't like that. John Paul kind of ends up on top. It's not going to be good for us, but we don't want the John Paul book. John Paul is in the Epstein files. Okay. So Udita thinks, I wonder if she's at that land. Maybe that's where Barbara wound up. In an interesting act of walking away from the woods, when Udita makes her way north to the Hewitt land, it's not woods that she has to travel through, it's a lake. She has to swim her way out. She has to swim a half mile to see where Barb is. I think there's probably something there about cleansing. I think the rainstorm was something. I think water is doing something else in this book. The woods are one kind of danger, but water is a different danger, but it also represents something. I'm not sure what it is, and I would, as you read this book, give some time to think about what she's saying about water. What's water doing? But it's very telling that she has to swim a half a mile across this pond. She gets to the other side, and there is Barbara, alive and well, and living alone in a cabin in the woods because, again, like I said, she was a survivalist. So that brings me to some conclusions here. Barbara can hide out there now as long as she wants. She's got everything she needs to survive. She's only 13, and the question or the kind of answer posed by the author is that at 18, she can rejoin society and do what she wants. Or is she going to stay there? We don't know. But the best thing is, for the first time in this book, there's a woman in this book who's going to make a decision for herself about her future. And that's Barbara. So there are two passages I'm going to read together. They aren't together in the book, but together they hit on all three themes. They're very much toward the end. Okay. The sudden realization for TJ and Barbara of how useful it might be. This is about, sorry, I jumped right in. They're going to frame John Paul. I really love that they framed John Paul, so I'm going to just come back to that one more time. Planting those clothes in John Paul's trunk will serve a dual purpose. Not only will they throw investigators off the scent of where Barbara had really gone, but they would function as a neat form of justice. Justice for Louise, who had gone to TJ once with her fresh injuries after being beaten by him. Justice for Carl, who himself was framed after death by two families, the McCullens and Van Laars, who wished to preserve their good reputations. And justice, too, for T.J. Hewitt's own father, who had entered into a sort of agreement that went against his set of ethics, reduced him to no better than the Van Laars themselves. With two simple actions, revealing the truth about Bear and helping Barbara to hide, the Hewits have redeemed themselves. They've retraced their steps to their last wrong turn and taken a different path instead. Judy, though, wonders what will happen to the Hewits because of this. So I'm going back a few pages when she was wondering that. What will happen to them? What will she do now, wonders Judy, if the Hewits lose the camp, meaning Camp Emerson? If the Van Laars cut them out entirely, as no doubt they'll do, snapping the thin thread that has stretched for decades between the Hewits and Peter I. And she answers her question herself. They'll be fine. The Hewits, like Judita, like Louise, like Denny, like others that have been hurt, don't need to rely on anyone but themselves. It's the Van Laars and families like them who have always depended on others. So to wrap up, my question is, who is the God of the woods? Who is it? This book has about 40 million characters. Okay? Who's the God of the woods? The Van Laars clearly think they are. Peter 1, 2, 3, they all think they're God of the woods. The author, interestingly, she was thinking about the Greek god Pan when she wrote this book. The Greek god of all the wild, the god of the forest. If you're maybe most familiar with him in pop culture from maybe A Midsummer Night's Dream, he creates all kinds of havoc for the lovers in Shakespeare's comedy. But Pan is actually in the Greek associated with sudden irrational fear, and it's where we get the word panic. I didn't know that until I researched this. Thank you, Dr. Litz. So, but that's what Liz Moore was, the god of the woods that was in her mind was Pan, and him not as the mischievous, frolicky Pan, the bad Pan, the scary Pan, the dangerous Pan. I'm going to argue, though, I had a different takeaway. I would say that there are women in this book that are the goddesses of the woods. I would say Mary is one of them, Mary Stoddard. I would certainly say TJ is a goddess of the woods. But ultimately, I think Barbara is the titular god of the woods. And she's making her way with the woods as not a danger or something to endure, but rather as her protection. She's turned the woods into home, which is something she never had before. Thank you. Y'all got to hear everything I thought. What do y'all think?
This is certainly not terribly smart, but when I came to Judy Ta,
Yeah.
that's what I thought it was, Judy Ta. I'm so glad to hear it, Judita.
It's Judita. Yeah, her name is Judita.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they call her Judy most of the time. But I thought it was nice to honor her real name, Judita. Any thoughts, any questions?
I have not read the book, although I'm certainly looking forward to it now. But when you mentioned who's the god of the woods, and you said the author was thinking of Pan, I was thinking, just from what you told, Barbara.
Yeah.
And Diana, who's the goddess of the hunt.
Yes, yes,
So.
yes. Very good to pull Diana into it. And actually, there is a passage where TJ is teaching Barbara to hunt for food so that she can live.
It seems like there's another goddess in there in ancient Greece, besides Diana, that's associated with the woods, but I can't think of it. Circe was, a lesser goddess, and she knew all the plants and the potions and the ways of animals. So I don't know, there's not enough clues in what I've learned from this, whether Barbara is, a stand-in for Circe, but it seems like Diana.
I went over in time, and I feel like I edited a lot out.
Actually, you just hit an hour.
Oh, okay.
That's standard.
So Tracy is an interesting stand-in. This is Barbara's bunkmate. She's kind of our audience surrogate, trying to figure out what happened. But I wonder, if we were to go back and recast this, I bet there's a lot of Greek mythology playing in. I think a lot of John Paul's behavior is probably maps over evil deeds. You know, I think there's a lot there. I think that's probably a really rich text for enthusiasts of Greek mythology.
I had sort of dual feelings about the book. I liked it a lot in the sense that I couldn't put it down. I always, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? But I really did not. I felt, yes, there were some women, there were some strong women, but all the rich people were evil.
Yep.
The poor people were put upon. All the men were jerks, all of them. I mean, here and there was
Like
one.
Vic's okay. Yeah.
Vic and also Juditha's partner.
Yes, he's
was
okay.
okay, but even the ones that were okay, they're bumbling or ineffectual. And then the women, there were the 3 women who were powerful in their own right, but then the other women were limp nothings.
Yes.
It was just,
I hear you. So I know that's where I started tracing the women were getting more powerful as the century moved forward.
Yeah.
And I thought, chances are Barbara is going to be a whole person. Because even TJ, who we love, right? The readers, you can't not love TJ. She took over her dad's job. She never really chose what to do with her life. We think she's closeted, right? We think she probably, right, well, I mean, we don't get to hear it from her. Like, but
it's all assumptions, yeah, we don't know for sure.
we don't know for sure, but it's pretty clear. So like, she's not living the life she would choose to live if given a choice. So I do think that you're absolutely right in that the examination of gender here is in some ways reduced to some stereotypes. Right. Yeah. But
Well, there were stereotypes that existed at that time in a very dark.
that's what I was going to say. I think they map through the years effectively. I'm just thinking of my own. I'm thinking something that it reminds me of is, so in my family, my great-grandmother went to school through 8th grade. My grandmother finished high school. My mom went to 2 years of nursing school. I went to college, and my daughter's going to get a master's degree. So it maps over those 5 generations. And we're just one family. We're just one linear line. I think Liz Moore is probably drawing some simple conclusions just to make that line. But I don't disagree with you. I feel like this could be a really rich dialogue for hours.
One of the things I thought she did really, really well was not so much the financial inequality, but the inequality between local Adirondacers, residents, and people who come in
Yes, the summer people.
and act like because we are from away, we are so much more than you.
Mhm.
And that's why I think some of the rich people might seem bumbling. Well, in that setting, they're
bumbling. Yeah, they are bumbling. They are actually bumbling once they're, again, the naming the estate self-reliance is just too yummy. It's as equally yummy as, again, framing drum call. No, you're absolutely right. It is about the 2 worlds colliding because the locals are clearly rich in knowledge of the Adirondacks. Now, interestingly, Liz Moore's mother's family lost their land in the Adirondacks to gentrification 3 generations ago. So she has a really big feeling about the inequality of that. Yeah.
One of the things I really loved about this book is the character studies. There's like so many characters and you really get to know each of them, or at least scratch the surface where you wish you knew more.
Yeah.
And in so many books I find today, there's a mystery. And it's like, is this going to be another mystery? Well, this is really a mystery. But the characters are so good, and
Yes.
rich, and what an author. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like a throwaway of, each person is a story.
I agree. I think Louise has a fascinating story. Her mother is really complicated and kind of awful. She's taking care of her teenage brother. She has this engagement that's sort of nebulous and weird, and she wants to go to college. She can't afford it. She ends up working at this summer camp. Louise has a book and another stuff. There's a whole Louise book right there. Judita, there's a whole series. I agree with you. I think there's a series of Judita books in this book. Judita's an immigrant, or from, she may be first generation, but she's from an immigrant family. She deals with her parents not wanting her to get her an apartment, on and on. I mean, there's just so much that happens. Yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is, that leads me to why I didn't really like the book as well, and that I felt there's so many characters, I didn't feel like I knew enough about any of them.
Okay.
I felt like, man, I would like to know, to really, I didn't understand anybody.
Yeah.
Enough. And again, that was just my own reading of it.
I listened to the Liz Moore
Oh, good.
talk too.
Good.
And she said when she writes a book, she does do a character study. She wrote a lot of character studies, and the character may show up in the book, but she didn't go into them, so she threw them. That was part of the 20%
She just tossed. Yeah, she did. She has all this other stuff about them, so yeah, she gives us what. She also played a lot with who would be the audience surrogates and who we get. We don't get the same amount of omniscient narration with each character. So some we get a lot of their internal life, and some we don't get any. Like, if you know, none of the Peters do we get any of their internal life. But they don't have them, right? Yeah. They have the moral compass. The people with the moral compass, we get to see their full internal life. The people without a moral compass get none. Yeah, I really like that. So I've already kept you long. Thank you so much. I really appreciated talking to you. And I wanted to leave you with one fun fact about this book that is the most fun of all the facts you could ever have about a book, is that in the Eras Tour documentary, Taylor Swift is listening to an audiobook while she's on the European leg of the tour, and that audiobook is The God of the Woods.